Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
I just want to say that nothing says you're about to turn 30 quite like showing up to your podcast recording with your heating pad on your back and drinking your LaCroix. I mean,
This is 30.
I have arrived. We're here.
Yeah.
Just struggling with my back lately, and the heating pad, it feels really good. It helps a lot. So
I fucked up my knee recently, and it's making me feel very old. So I feel that.
Yeah, we are just falling apart over here. We did go on a walk together today, so I think we're mutually sore from our workouts
Those
in
hills
the past week, and then the hills today on our walk just like exacerbated it. Yeah, it's quite hilly in my neighborhood, and poor Courtney just along for the ride.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely got my heart rate up a little bit, for our walk, that it elevated my exercise because I've been resting a lot the past few days, like trying to get my knee back in like good shape. So that was good to get me a little
Good.
winded. I needed
Glad
that.
I could help.
I haven't really been doing anything since I did like a very long walk and my knee hurt very badly after that. So
hopefully today's was a nice, good enough length that it's like, okay, getting some things moving, but not so much that we re-injure ourselves.
Yeah.
But I love how I just
that's the goal.
Yeah. I just text Courtney at like 3:45 on a Sunday afternoon. I'm like, hey, it's last minute, but do you want to come over and walk? And she's like right now? And I'm like, yes. She's like, okay.
All right, let me put my pants on. Let me change out of my sweatpants into my leggings.
Exactly. I was like, you could go for a walk in sweatpants. It's cool enough outside. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have like my like lounging sweatpants and then like my walking sweatpants, or like legging kind of thing. So
I understand that. Yeah. Courtney and I were also talking right before we started recording about, so my husband is gone this week, and I realized today that my Ring doorbell is dead, so I'm gonna have to charge it tomorrow. And it is, by the time you guys are hearing this, my husband is back and my Ring doorbell is back on. So, don't even bother coming to my house. But at this time, and Courtney was saying, people aren't likely to like break into like rob you at night anyway. Like usually that happens like during the day when people are gone. And I was like, like I really want to know like what like robbery rates, like statistics are like now versus like 3 years ago. Like since a lot more people work from home now than they did 3 years ago. I'm like, is this, is it happening less frequently, or like do they just like scope out and know like who is home when? But then also, I know you have a lot of people that work hybrid and may not work like the same days in office versus at home, So I'd be interested to see that because, like, I mean, at my house, like, someone is here pretty much 24/7, like, so.
Same here. So I don't know if, because a lot of times they do scope it out, and I feel like a lot of jobs recently have made people start going back to the office like full time. So maybe like it's starting to, because I'm sure during like peak COVID there was like no robberies. Not no robberies whatsoever because people were still having to leave, but I'm sure there was definitely like a dip down, and then we saw a rise in murder, which isn't great. Maybe there's a correlation with that.
There you go. But murders are on the
decline, and maybe robberies are back up. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm glad Courtney provided the verbal cue there as I'm like doing a hand motion. I'm like, this is a podcast. You guys can't see me, but Courtney picked up what I was putting down and she went with it.
Yeah. Which makes me think again, like we're talking when we don't have the exact statistic. And last episode, I was saying most podcasts don't make it past, I can't remember the statistic. I looked it up and it took me a while, but 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3.
Oh, wow. 3.
Isn't that crazy?
That's super crazy because like I feel like there's so much effort that goes into like those first few episodes that I'm like, once you get to that point, it's like you're like, okay, like we're in the swing of it now, I feel like.
And I don't know if because there is like millions of podcasts that people are like, let me do a sports podcast where I just sit down and don't do any research and I'm just talking out my butt, whatever.
Yeah.
Like where people are just chatting about certain things and then realize maybe it's a lot of work by episode 3 and then whatever. But yeah, episode 3.
Wow. That is interesting. Crazy. We had 3 episodes before we launched. So I mean,
yeah.
Because we were like,
and you know what? I will tell you, when we first started, I was like, is this because we were having to do so much research in the beginning to get ready to release 3 on like one day.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh my God, this is a lot. So, I kind of get it because it's more manageable now, especially since we've like worked out all of our kinks and stuff. But yeah.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, I was just thinking, like, I guess, what is it? The what's it called? The sunk cost fallacy. Is that right? Where you're like, oh, like I've already like put like time or money or whatever into it, so I have to keep going with it, even though like even if I quit today, I don't get that back. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
I don't remember.
I guess that's where my mind
it's probably that, but I can't remember what it's called at all. So,
but that's where my mind goes of like, when you first start a podcast, it's like you have to get equipment and you have to like learn how to record and learn how to edit, like all this like time and effort that you, which I mean, maybe some people like don't do those things ahead of time and they just like, here's my phone and let me start talking and then figure it out as I go.
Didn't really start with like microphones either. Or it was like two people on one mic, or, you know, not just kind of using their headphone jack, like headphones and stuff. So
that's true. So maybe we're just too much of a perfectionist and we like, I mean, we planned for like 2 full months, I think, before like the first episode came out from like the time we're like,
bought a microphone, like a good microphone ish. It was a good cheap mic. It was a mid-range priced microphone.
It was a good price microphone.
Expensive to me, but in terms of podcast microphones, it's not expensive.
Yeah, but in terms of like, are we gonna last past 3 episodes? It was a good, a good,
definitely.
Price point. What did your research show you, like at what point the podcasts that are going to like take off? Because I mean, you know, we're at 3 years, so I'm still waiting for it.
I know. That's what I want to know. Like, when are we gonna strike big? Who's gonna find us? I always think too, like when I listen to like Morbid or like My Favorite Murder, and they're like, this podcast just did a great episode on it, and they were so cute and quirky, and I'm like waiting for that moment for us when they like find us for research and then blast us. So
we can only hope. We can only hope. Until then, for the 4 of you who are here, no, I'm kidding. our downloads do increase like over time. Like when we look at now, like the number of downloads we get like on like release week versus like a year ago, like I mean we're getting there, you know, slowly but surely. So that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Quality over quantity. Because sometimes like these ones that have like a lot of listeners, like half the listeners are just hate listeners, so they can like talk shit about them later and they get hate comments. So we're at a pretty good spot. I mean, we still get a few hate comments, but it's very rare. I feel like not every day. So
yeah,
I mean, obviously I do want to like make money on the podcast and it be a lot bigger and have a big audience, but at least who we have right now is like solid. So if you listen and you're listening to this, just reach out to us and let us know, because you probably think they get messages all the time telling them. We don't. We don't. We get like one, maybe. We have one. Catherine, you're steady and true. You message us every time.
We love you. We love you so much.
But like, we really don't get that many messages. So if you're ever like, I'm listening and I, you know, love this podcast, just reach out, because, you know, it could make our day.
It makes our day when we get those random messages of like, oh, like I've been listening a long time and I wanted to say blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, like you guys are here, like talk to us. Like at the end of the episode, when we say reach out about blah, 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 we are not kidding. Like we would love to talk to you guys. So please do. And I don't think we have any true crime updates today.
Not that I could come up with. I'm sure there's some out there somewhere in the world, but not in this brain.
I'm sure there is some crime that has happened this week, but speaking of reaching out and chatting to us about episodes, we always love suggestions. So this case was a suggestion by our listener and friend Jennifer. So she's been talking to me a lot about some of the past episodes we've been doing. And this is one that is, you know, close to her. And so she wanted us to cover it. And it is wild. I mean, what a ride we are about to take you guys on.
It's a ride.
Yeah. So our sources for this episode are a documentary called Hometown Tragedy, the Pike County Massacre, a couple of WLWT articles, a WHSV article, CNN, Oxygen.com, and People.com. So 8 members of the same family were murdered in their respective homes in 2016 in what would become Ohio's largest murder investigation ever. And it would take years and many false leads before another local family was arrested for these murders. So before we begin, we're going to go over the family tree of the Rhoden family because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of connections. So we don't want you guys or ourselves to get confused because I'm not going to lie, like I needed to create the family tree when I was doing this to make sure that I knew what the hell I was talking about. So
That happens a lot. Even the show I was watching recently, I was like, I feel like I need a family tree to figure this out.
That reminds me of when I first started watching the show Parenthood, and I was like, Courtney, I'm so confused. And so Courtney drew me a family tree, and it helped a lot.
Yeah, because they have
so
like 4 kids who all have kids who,
yeah. I'm so bad. Like I can sorry to get off track already. We're just like 30 seconds in. Here we go. I can like watch a show like 7 episodes in and be like, what is that main character's name? For some reason, it just does not stick in my brain.
Cannot remember.
Like I know what's happening. Like I'm following the plot line. Like it's not like I'm like not paying attention, but then I'm like names and I'm like the blonde or like the brunette guy. And you're just like this person. Yeah, them. Like
them. That's who I meant.
Okay. So the Rhoden family tree. So this was a close-knit family. They did have like several trailers on the same property. And then they also had a few other family members who like lived within a few miles of like this big property. So Christopher Rhoden Sr. married Dana Manley Rhoden, and they had 3 children together. So Christopher Jr., Frankie, and Hannah. So Hannah had 2 children. So she had a newborn baby, and she also had a 2-year-old. And Frankie was engaged to Hannah Gilly. So we also have 2 Hannahs. So it makes it even more confusing.
Yeah.
So that couple had a 6-month-old baby, and Frankie also had a 3-year-old son. So Christopher Sr.'s brother, Kenneth, and one of their cousins, Gary, also lived nearby. So now that you're totally on board and not confused at all. So this family lived in Pike County, Ohio, which is about 80 miles east of Cincinnati. So on April 22nd, 2016, Bobby Jo Manley visited her brother-in-law, Chris Rhoden Sr., and after entering the home, she found Chris dead in his bedroom. So there was blood everywhere, and he had been severely beaten. She then saw the body of his cousin, Gary Rhoden, inside the home as well. She immediately called 911 and told them what she had seen. And since they did have other family members who lived in this nearby trailer, like on the same property, she went to check on them as well. So in the next house, she did find Clarence Rhoden, who went by Frankie, and his fiancee, Hannah Gilly, both dead in their home as well, having been shot to death. The couple's infant was found alive and covered in their blood, and their 3-year-old child was also found unharmed. So both of the children are alive at this point. So Bobby Jo's older brother, James, found the bodies of their sister, Dana Rhoden, and her children, 16-year-old Christopher Rhoden Jr. and 19-year-old Hannah Mae Rhoden. So Hannah's 4-day-old newborn baby was unharmed, but still in bed with Hannah when her body was found. And she also had a 2-year-old that we mentioned, but the 2-year-old was staying with her father that night, so was not involved in any of this. And later that day, another cousin, Donald Stone, found the body of Kenneth Rhoden, Chris's brother, in his trailer about 15 minutes away from the rest of the family.
How horrific to be like, here's this tight-knit family with their little, like, not compound, but like little community where they all live near each other. And now, like, every single one of them is like dead, basically.
Like, that's like the craziest part about this. It's like, it's not like, oh, you just entered one home and murdered everyone there. It's like you murdered members of a family in 3 separate houses. Like,
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So like we said, this was a close-knit family who like lived near each other. They spent a lot of time together. Community members described them as hardworking and loving. And like the police are just like shocked and have like no idea what they're getting into. Like this is a very rural area. Like people don't lock their doors. Like this does not happen there. And there were more than 30 total shots that killed 8 members of the same family. So they're like, what the hell are we walking into? So they did begin their investigation with very few leads. There was initially some information about a marijuana growing operation and cockfighting that led police to believe like maybe this was cartel related, especially again being an entire family like shot execution style in each of their homes, kind of went down that path. So the large amounts of marijuana plants along with like I said, the way the members of the family were executed kind of led to this assumption. And police also looked into the Manleys for a while because Bobby Jo and James Manley were the ones who originally found the bodies, but they didn't find any evidence to implicate them in the murders. So they're just kind of like, trying to see what the hell they can go off of at this point.
Yeah.
So police did receive over 1,100 tips, some of them from like psychics and from prison inmates. So it did take a while to like sort through them and see which of these are legitimate, like which are not. And they did conduct more than 400 interviews. So as an investigative technique, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation issued a search warrant to an undisclosed cell phone provider to get a list of all devices that connected to the towers near the Rhoden homes on the night of the murders. So they're basically searching for like patterns. So like they don't have like a specific number that they're looking at, but they're like, oh, like, is there like a number that's like never before been in this area that suddenly was like this night? Or like, is there someone who's usually in that area who suddenly their phone is off during this time period? So like, that's kind of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And they described it in the documentary, and they're like, usually this is like helpful in big cities because like there are lots of towers. So it's pretty easy to pinpoint like where people are in exact locations. But it did not help in this case because every single resident of Pike County showed up on the tower. So like, because
there's not that many towers. So it's just like, yeah, we're all here. We're all here.
So they're like, well, that was a waste. But I included that because I feel like it really shows like how rural this community was, you know? However, cell phone records did provide documentation of the last people the Rhoden family communicated with prior to their murders. And surveillance cameras from nearby homes also showed 2 vehicles driving through the area that morning. So they do have a little bit that they're going off of at this point. So family and friends did publicly ask for information about the murders, like as the years went by, because like we said in the beginning, it would take a while for all of this to come out. So they're like on the media and they're just like, you know, if you know anything, please come forward. But they did eventually stop talking to the media because they're like, we don't really know that we can trust anyone at this point. Like, and, you know, nothing was really happening. So they just kind of went quiet for a little bit. And members of that community really just lived in fear that like they were also in danger because they're like, we have no idea who did this. So obviously like this could happen to any of us. And the sheriff did announce that anyone concerned with their safety should arm themselves due to the time it takes law enforcement to arrive in such a rural area. So like if you call us, it's like it could be 15, 20 minutes before somebody gets there. So it's like you should arm yourself to ensure your safety.
Yeah.
And many believed that the killer or killers would have been present at the funerals and would live nearby. Just again, looking into anything they possibly can, but they're like, this is such a small area. And like, clearly whoever did this knew that all of these members lived like nearby, you know, it doesn't seem random. They're like, someone had to have known this community to do this.
Yeah.
So more than a year after the murder, police put out a request that they were seeking information about 4 members of a local family called the Wagners. So 24-year-old Jake Wagner was the father of Hannah Rhoden's daughter, and their family had moved to Alaska after the murders. So police did not announce that they were suspects, just that they were like interested in speaking with them. But then finally, in November of 2018, those 4 individuals were arrested for the murders of the Rhoden family. So that was 46-year-old George, who went by Billy Wagner III, his wife, 46-year-old Angela Wagner, and their sons, 25-year-old George Wagner IV, and 24-year-old Edward Jake Wagner, who went by Jake. So the family had lived in Peoples, Ohio at the time of the murder, but had been living in Alaska since then. So the Wagners and the Rhodens had been friends for a long time, but they were in a custody battle over Hannah and Jake's daughter. And at the time of the murders, all 4 of the Wagners agreed to be interviewed by police and turned in their laptops and cell phones, as well as consented to provide DNA samples. So Jake Wagner was the only one who did not turn in his cell phone at that time. And Jake Wagner was also interviewed again 3 weeks after the murders, and his hair had been dyed a different color. And then, like we said, the family did move to Alaska shortly after. So in 2018, the FBI was able to track Billy Wagner to Lexington, Kentucky, where he was pulled over while driving a horse trailer, and finding Billy did lead to the arrest of the other family members. So authorities announced that there was evidence that the Wagners plotted this murder for months and went into their homes while everyone was sleeping, intending to murder all of them execution style. So the sheriff said evidence included parts to build a silencer, forged documents, camera footage, and cell phone records. So basically, the Wagners had been pressuring Hannah Rhoden to sign over her parental rights to them. And so basically, all of this came about because they wanted custody of Jake and Hannah's daughter. And Hannah's like, no, like that's not going to happen. And Hannah had sent a message to someone on Facebook saying, "I won't sign papers ever. It won't happen. They will have to kill me first." So
that's, ugh.
I know, it's so awful. So Angela Wagner's mother, Rita Newcomb, was also arrested and indicted on 3 counts of forgery, 1 count obstructing justice, and 1 count perjury. So she had forged a custody document about their daughter just 19 days before the Rhoden family was murdered. So like, oh, you're not going to sign your daughter over? Well, we'll just forge it and do it that way. And Billy's mother, Frederica Wagner, was also arrested and indicted on 1 count obstructing justice and 1 count perjury. So those charges were eventually dropped, and the Wagner family is just continuing to deny that they have any knowledge of these murders. They're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. We had nothing to do with this.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. They're dead? What? I didn't know that.
I don't know. We have all these connections. I have no idea.
Not me.
Yeah. So another couple years go by. So they're all in jail this whole time, awaiting trial. A status hearing was held on April 21st, 2021 in the Pike County courtroom. So this was actually the 5th anniversary of the killings when this hearing was held. And at this hearing, it was announced that Jake Wagner had agreed to a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. So he pleaded guilty to 23 counts, including 8 counts of aggravated murder, although he claimed he only killed 5 of the Rhodens and then shot 1 other, but he still pled guilty to all of them. And these charges also included unlawful sexual conduct because Hannah was only 13 years old when their relationship began when he was 18.
Oof.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. Ew.
Yeah. And Hannah was pregnant with their child at 15. So at this point, she's 15, he's 20. Like, there's no arguing whether or not they were in a sexual relationship. Like, you have a child literally to prove that this happened.
Which is also crazy that you're like fighting for custody. I'm like, I would not be like bringing up too much this kid being like, nah, I'm not that old. Don't think about the ages. Just, I want custody of the baby. And they're like, oh, it's your baby?
Yeah.
She's a child.
Yeah. Which, like, I guess if the families, like, got along, it's like no one was going to press those charges, you know? True. So it's like.
But I would think maybe, like, if they're doing this really big custody battle, like, couldn't you use that? Like, I mean, maybe that. Yeah. But.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So after Jake's confession, his mother, Angela, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated murder, burglary, evidence tampering, and other charges. But the prosecutors did agree to drop the murder charges and recommended that she serve 30 years in prison because, like, basically everyone agreed that she did not actually kill anyone. So they're like, okay, we'll drop the aggravated murder charges and we'll agree on 30 years for all of your other crimes. So both Jake and Angela's deals included that they would have to testify against the other defendants. And no one involved in these cases is allowed to speak to the media due to a gag order.
So George IV went to trial first in September 2022. This was the first time the 4 members of the Wagner family saw each other in person since their arrest in 2018. So this is 19, 20, 21, 5 years?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
4 years, like, yeah.
4 since they've seen each other. So it's like, that's a pretty long time. And the family was actually being held in 4 different jails, which makes sense. You don't want them talking to each other.
Yeah. So like, we don't need you guys coming up with any more stories here.
No, we do not. So the trial lasted for 2.5 months, during which time many witnesses testified about being threatened by the Wagner family. So family members of Hannah Rhoden testified that she was scared of the Wagner family and that they were trying to take her daughter away from her. Many also described Jake as a controlling older boyfriend, and multiple people testified that Jake was physically abusive to Hannah, and one cousin even testified that Hannah had shared recordings with her of Jake admitting to hitting her, choking her, and shoving her against the wall. So not only did he take advantage of someone significantly younger than him, he was also very abusive.
Yeah. And like admitted to it. Like she had recorded him like saying like, yeah, I did that. Like basically what the fuck are you going to do about it?
Yeah. So Jake testified at this trial and said that he thought their daughter was being sexually abused. He said he was afraid that, quote, Hannah would let his daughter get sexually molested like she was. He said he was afraid.
Sorry, I just have to say that sentence just like infuriated me to no other. Like, oh, she was going to let our child get molested just like she was. Like, it's her fault that she was molested. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That line just like literally infuriated me to no end.
I think that tells you everything you need to know about him. Like, these last 3 sentences tell you everything you need to know about Jake Wagner.
Yeah.
He said the Facebook message Hannah sent saying he would have to kill her to get custody was the tipping point, and it was then that he decided he had no other choice but to kill Hannah. Not shared custody, not a parenting plan.
Yeah. None of these other legal options. No.
So he went to his father, who agreed that's what they would do. So Billy mentioned they should kill Hannah and her current boyfriend and make it look a murder-suicide by the boyfriend, but then they decided against that. They decided they'd have to kill the other members of the Rhoden family who would be witnesses. Jake said once the idea was there, his father took care of all the planning. Jake was in charge of getting a different vehicles to use so that like no one in the area would recognize it. And Jake and George both dyed their hair dark to like look different. And he also said he watched Boondock Saints to hype himself up before the killings. So this movie is about vigilante brothers who kill members of the Russian mafia in self-defense. And Jake even like smiled in court when a clip of the movie was played.
Again, like Courtney said, like the last few sentences tell you everything you need to know about this piece of shit. Like, oh yeah, I watched this movie to like get hyped up before the murders. Like we were doing something good.
Disgusting. Yeah. Like I gotta hype myself, gotta prep myself up to kill the mother of my child.
Yeah. And also he's like, oh, well, we have to kill all these other people who are witnesses. Like they were in different homes. How the fuck are they witnesses? Yeah. Like, I guess because it's the same property. So like, oh, like someone may have seen us like driving up. So, but like, it was literally the middle of the night and everyone was sleeping. Like, what?
Yeah. This is more like, this is something clearly this whole family has wanted to do for a while. Like they were just looking for their victims, basically.
Yeah.
So he tried several different ways to build a gun silencer and burn the parts from his unsuccessful attempts on their property. He had his mother buy new tennis shoes from Walmart for himself and George, and they waited until they'd left their property to put them on so they wouldn't track the soil to the crime scene. He also
feels like super smart for people who are so fucking dumb. Like, like that just seems like a very like specific thing to think of like, oh, like even though I have these new shoes, like I can't wear them at my house because like they might be able to tell that like the soil came from my house. And I'm like, y'all are a bunch of fucking morons. And like, you thought of that? Like,
yeah, like that is crazy. Like they did put like a lot of thought into this, but still like just dumb.
Yeah.
He built a false bed on the borrowed truck so that George could hide in it. And they decided to do it on a cloudy night so the satellites would have trouble picking up images. And they also waited until after Hannah had given birth to her newborn baby before carrying out the murders. So typical pro-lifers over here, that her life mattered when she was pregnant, but now it does not, which we see a lot.
Like, oh, now that this baby is a whole 5 days old, now I can murder the mother because, you know, it's not like a baby is dependent on its mother at that time or anything.
No. The baby's been born and that's all we care about.
Yup.
So Billy had a cell phone signal jammer that would prevent the Rhoden family from calling 911, but the battery died and it didn't work. At some of the houses, the door was unlocked and they were able to go through the front door, but they had to pry windows open at others. He said they intentionally left the children who were present and didn't harm them, even though you're leaving them all orphaned and with lifelong trauma of who knows what they've seen or will remember.
Exactly. Like, not even to mention, like, you didn't know how long it was going to take before these bodies were found, and you were just leaving these children with their dead parents. But, oh, we didn't harm them. Okay.
Yeah. This is, again, how, like, these people who kill people just get the weirdest moral shit.
Right?
Where, like, they're like, oh, I killed them, but, oh, I didn't rape them. I would never do that. That's horrible. And it's like, that doesn't make it better.
Like, how do you separate these things in your brain to make this make sense?
Yeah, it's logical brains trying to think like illogical people, but
yeah.
Jake said that Hannah Rhoden was sitting up in bed nursing her newborn, and he believes she saw him before he shot her. After she was dead, he positioned her body so the baby would continue eating. Like, he didn't want the baby to starve to death if it took a while for the bodies to be discovered. So, like, again, like, trying to save these children after you murdered, like, the mother. Like,
And like that is an image that I'm never going to get out of my head. Like,
no.
that is one of the most disturbing things that I've ever read in all of our years of doing this. And I cannot unsee this, you know?
Yeah, that's fucking dark.
Yeah.
Like, the darkest.
And like I also like logistically, like I have to wonder, like, how long does your body continue producing milk like after you are dead, you know? Like, is this something that even would have kept the baby alive longer?
I know, like, do we even know how long you would keep producing milk? Like, how do you even study that?
Yeah. And like I was talking to our friend and listener, Sydney. So hi, Sydney, if you're listening to this, about this case like before today. And she's like, yeah, and you can't really like Google that either, because I feel like that like raises a lot of red flags. Like, yeah.
There is a lot of those
point.
things where you're like, how do I even look this up without it was like, I think it was when we did the Elizabeth Smart case and we were talking about how we were trying to look up like how kidnapping charges work when it's for multiple days. And then we were like, but this also looks really suspicious.
Yeah. I feel like every search needs to start with like, for my true crime podcast, ... Here's my question.
For my podcast, Caffeinated Crimes, give us a listen.
FBI agent who's reading this, go give us a follow.
Yeah. Our FBI agents probably love our podcast. They're like, oh, finally, I hope to listen to something. Anyway.
You guys reach out too, like we said in the beginning. Let us know.
Let us know. Oh. So Jake's mother stayed home with her grandchildren while Jake, George, and Billy murdered an entire family. And she was aware of their plan and had helped them prepare ahead of time. So while she did not physically kill anyone, she is just as responsible. Jake also testified he did not want their relationship to end when Hannah broke up with him. So friends testified that Jake choked Hannah when confronting her about their daughter being around other men. And Jake testified that he didn't choke her, but he did, quote, throw his right shoulder up against her and hold her against the barn when she was being lazy. Again, terrible, terrible human. So Jake's ex-wife testified that she left Jake because she was afraid of the whole family and feared for her life. Jake also wrongfully accused her of molesting his daughter. So this is just like his card, I guess he keeps pulling. Like, like he's just like so obsessed with like accusing the women of like molesting the children or letting them be molested.
And it's like, I think something happened to you that you're projecting here, because no one is obsessed with it. Like,
yeah. So George's ex-wife also testified to leaving her marriage for similar reasons. So it runs in the family, clearly. Evidence presented by the prosecution included the receipts and surveillance footage of Angela purchasing the tennis shoes that matched the crime scene, ballistics matching the shell casing to the weapons the Wagners owned, and receipts from Jake and George Wagner's credit cards to purchase parts to make gun silencers, bags of cement, which gun parts used in the murders like were hidden in buckets of cement. That's kind of where that comes in. And a cell phone jammer. So again, they thought all of this through, but they had a paper trail showing everything. So bank statements from 17 bank accounts in the Wagner's name were also examined, showing over $100,000 in transactions between other accounts, indicating there were ties to organized crime as well. So Jake testified that George never pulled a trigger the night of the murders. George had the gun outside the home where Chris Rhoden Sr. and Gary Rhoden were murdered, and Jake told him to shoot, but he didn't. So Jake took the gun and started shooting. So the jury reached a guilty verdict for George Wagner IV after 8 hours of deliberation. He was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 121 years. So he will never see the light of day again.
Yeah, like we're making sure that this motherfucker never breathes the air that the rest of us breathe again.
Yeah. And family members of the victims were allowed to read victim impact statements at sentencing. Hannah Gilly's mother, so not the Hannah that had a baby with Jake, the other Hannah, said, "My baby girl, I miss you beyond words. Another life taken too soon, but will never be forgotten." Her aunt also said, "To you, Hannah was just collateral damage in your sick and twisted plan," which again is heartbreaking because it's like she was like just there. Like,
yeah. Like she was not that any of them were like involved with it, but it's like she was only murdered because she was engaged to a member of this family. Like,
yeah. And it's just, again, like, there's just no words for it.
yeah.
Kenneth Rhoden's daughter said, "They say 8 lives were taken that day, but many more were stolen. I hope you burn in hell, George." Which, same.
Yeah.
And the mother of Frankie's 9-year-old son read a letter from him that said, "Why did you kill my daddy?" Which, like,
oh my God, that destroyed me.
Yeah. And George showed no emotion during the sentencing or victim impact statements. These murders were pre-planned and deliberate. They spent months planning these murders and monitoring their routines prior to executing them. They also attempted to cover up their crimes by tampering with cell phone evidence and surveillance cameras. And both of the older Wagner's mothers were also involved in covering up these crimes. So the two families were not just connected by this one child. Billy Wagner and Christopher Rhoden Sr. had previously been business partners, and Charlie Gilly, the brother of Hannah Gilly and the former boyfriend of Hannah Rhoden, was also the father of Hannah's newborn baby, although this wouldn't be known until paternity tests were done after Hannah's murder. So this is a very small community, so a lot of lives just kind of intersect here. Everyone knows everyone. So just connections like all over the place.
Yeah.
So this was the senseless and cold-blooded murder of Christopher Rhoden Sr., Dana Manley Rhoden, Christopher Rhoden Jr., Frankie Rhoden, Hannah Rhoden, Hannah Gilly, Gary Rhoden, and Kenneth Rhoden.
Just, like senseless and cold-blooded, I feel like it's really the only way to describe that. Like,
not like so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Over a custody battle, which is just like 8 people over a custody battle. And then, you know, like one of the victim impact statements said, like, it's not just 8 people. You took away the parents of multiple children, and the trauma that all these relatives have to deal with, and just the heartbreak for the community, just like so much, just a huge impact.
Like, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were like, this family would have done this for any reason. Like, clearly this is not something that you just like, oh, well, I guess I have to kill 8 people of this family so I can get custody of. Like, this is something that like at some point in your life, you and your family would have found it. Like, and how do you get 2 people and their children to all come to the consensus of like, oh, yeah, and the grandparents, like they were all in on it, like the grandmothers too. And it's just like, what?
Yeah, that's the thing I don't understand. And like, you're watching Boondock Saints to like hype yourself up. So clearly you're watching these movies or consuming this media being like, I want to do this. This is what I want in my life, which is just fucked up.
And like I said, like the amount of trauma that the children who are like present are going to have to go through for things that like their brain is not going to forget seeing, even like their brain will, but like they're like the trauma stays in your body. You know what I mean? Like consciously,
the body
like,
keeps score.
Yes, it's like
the
consciously,
book, we've all heard of it.
You're not going to have a memory of that, but like the trauma is there. And also, not to mention what their child is going to have to go through, like knowing that like she was the center of this whole thing. Like obviously, like it is in no way her fault, but like she's going to read these stories and know that like, oh, this happened over a custody battle with me. And also every article used her name, which I strongly disagree with. So I did not use her name. But that made me really uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't think we need to like put this child's name,
especially she was
there.
So young. Like usually they don't post minors' names,
right? I was shocked.
Yeah, I mean that's hard too because you're like, well, my mother's dead because my father and my uncle and my grandparents and my great grandparents murdered the rest of my entire family. Like just having to grow up without a family, basically. Like especially her, like. stripped away of like basically your entire family because half are in jail because they killed the other half. Like,
exactly. Like, oh
that's
my
so
God.
hard.
Yeah. Also, curiosity got the better of me. And while Courtney was talking, I did try to look up if you continue like producing breast milk like after you're dead. Cannot find any definitive answers. Did find a discussion board where like other people had the same question. And basically all the responses are like, I mean, there's no
How do
research
you
on
even
this,
study this?
obviously. Yeah. Like, and why would you? I mean, like the one discussion board I found, the lady that like asked the question was like, oh, like I'm a single mom and like God forbid something happened to me. Like my 1-year-old can like walk to me and like find my boob. Like, would they be able to like survive? And people are like, I mean, probably not. Like, I don't think it's going to.
Especially because I feel like it would take like a blood flow.
Yeah.
So then, like, oh my God, the thought that just came in my mind is so horrible. I'm sorry. I'm a terrible person. Like, would it be rotten milk? Like, would it rot? Because
I don't know.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, would
Because
it
I
become
feel
like
like
bad? Like, would it sour?
so you can like empty a breast of like breast milk. So like when you're like pumping or like the baby's eating, like there's going to come a point like in that session where like the milk will stop. So I feel like the baby would probably be able to continue eating like what was already produced. You know what I mean? Because it's like basically like,
But there's probably no new production, probably because it
yeah,
probably takes a blood flow. Okay.
that would
Because
that
I'm
would be
like
my
thinking where
thought.
I'm like, in the instance of the like discussion board
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, she's like, I'm a single mother, like my 1-year-old could find her way to me or him to me. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what if it had been like hours after
Yeah,
you die? Like, is the milk going to spoil in your
I don't
body?
know. Because I mean, like I would think, I don't know.
Because
Because
I know it's like
also,
warm, and then I know like you become cold after you die, but are you cold
yeah.
enough to keep it? I don't
But
know. I have
then
no idea.
and some of the comments that I was reading too on like the discussion board where people were like, chiming in their thoughts. People were talking about how the letdown of like the baby actually being able to, because like obviously like your boob, I mean, for some people your boobs may just leak milk all the time, but usually it doesn't. Like usually it takes the baby like suckling to, extract the milk. So like basically the process in the woman's body that causes that to happen are like hormone related. So it's like once those things stop, like would the baby even be able to like would the breast let down the milk that's in there?
Another question too is usually about an hour after death, when like rigor mortis starts, you know, you kind of
Mm-hmm.
like your sphincter relaxes. Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you'll like let
Yeah.
everything loose. Would the same happen with your breasts where all the milk would then just come out? Because I don't know. You know what I'm saying? If like, I don't know how exactly nipples work in that fashion, if it would just start spewing or just start leaking.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
This episode is going so derailed.
Also, most of the searches, trigger warning here for miscarriage, stillborn, if you guys want to skip forward a few. Like most of the searches are like, how long does your body produce milk after your baby dies? So I'm not
Yeah.
finding
Yeah, that's, and I mean, again, this is something we're never really going to know unless it's like case by case where like, okay, well, this woman was
yeah.
breastfeeding, this happened with her, but we don't know if that happens across the board because every person's different. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things like, how do you even research that? Like,
Yeah.
that's such a specific thing. So
Exactly. Wow,
anyway,
this went in all kinds of directions. Okay. Yeah, so just absolutely horrific murder, just so senseless, so tragic, so many people whose lives will never be the same. Okay, let's bring this up to close you guys out for the
bring
week.
it back up.
Yeah, bring it up. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is last night, me and Jacqueline and
No,
our
that's
mutual
my
friend
perk of the
Tiffany.
week.
You want me to pick a different one?
No, no,
Or
no.
can
I was wondering, I
okay.
was like, are we
I was
gonna have
like,
the same perk of the week?
I had a feeling. I was about to
No, I
say, I
think it's a
don't think I
good,
have a,
it's a worth it perk of the week. I assume you're
yeah,
gonna, yeah, go ahead. Okay.
I'm gonna get into it. We
Okay.
can just discuss together. So our mutual perk of the week is that we went to, it was like a punk drag show. So there was like punk bands there, and there was also drag shows, and there was also vendors. And I don't know if a lot of you guys know this who don't live in the state, but you might live in a state that's doing the same thing, where our state is, I think it is almost basically passed a law basically almost banning drag, where all shows have to be 18 up. Like children are not supposed to be around it. It's actually just complete bullshit. If you want to know the truth, it's just complete hatred, complete bullshit. And kind of like the host last night was saying, like, if there is an all ages drag show, like, drag queens are professional entertainers. Like, they know how to tailor it for children. Exactly. And they might dress as Elsa, or they might whatever. Like, they know how to go towards children, versus if it's an 18 up, they're gonna be doing a different kind of show because they know it's all adults. Like, literally, like, that is the definition of what that means. So this event did have to get changed to 18 plus. Before, it was minors were allowed to come with a parent. And of course, the bigots were out for
not very many of them, though.
For little wimpy ass protesters. And thankfully the counter protesting. Yeah. And I loved how they were recording the whole time. Like,
right? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
What do you think we're going to do? You're the hateful one here. So, but yeah, it's absolutely disgusting that it's happening at all, and that the protesters were there, and I just wanted to hit them with my car, but I wasn't going to because I'm trying to be a law-abiding citizen. And it's their like, I don't want to go to jail. Right to peacefully protest, but it's just such hatred, and it's just there's just not any words for it, because it's not just about drag shows. It's trying to target the trans community and people who are just trying to live their life. And have you seen now how they're sharing from Governor Bill Lee's high school book where he dressed as a woman?
Wow.
It was like some event thing. So he's dressed up as a woman. So they're like, by the way, here's this. But like, that's the thing we were talking about. I was talking with Kevin last night, because it was like, okay, well, what about Halloween? Like, am I not allowed to dress as like a male character? Because then like it's
this, like, drag has been a thing for like centuries. Like, when women were not allowed to like act in plays, like, men had to dress as women to play those parts. Like what do they think is so like perverse about the kind of clothing or makeup that a person wears? Like,
and you can take your kid to an R-rated movie if they're there with you. You should trust the parent is the thing. The parent should be able to know what the kid can handle, because there could be kids at 10 or 11 who can handle more, not talking about drag shows necessarily, but who could handle maybe an R-rated movie better than a 17-year-old could, just because of their life experience and how they are. But I'm also just really, I'm going to be writing in and being like, okay, well then Hooters and Twin Peaks, those better be 18 and up only, because
you see a hell of a lot more there than you do at a drag show.
Twin Peaks, we've seen in the summer how they wear thong bikinis, which is why I will not eat there, because I don't even care about their half naked. That is unsanitary. I can't take it. I don't want your pubes or your hair that's been in your butt crack in my food. Okay. I'm just saying I can't do it. But like, those places are very sexual. Like, especially too, like if you've seen, like if it's someone's birthday and like the little things they do, like stuff like that. I'm like, how is that any different than a drag show then? Because it's women being sexualized towards men.
Yep, exactly. But like you said, like, drag isn't even always sexual. Like, I mean, there may be sexual drag shows depending on the audience, but they also have like drag shows like for children. Like, I know in Richmond, like we used to have a bookstore that did like, it was like a drag story time or whatever. And it's like, obviously they're not going to be half naked when they're reading to children. I don't know what these, and like you said, like the show that we went to that had to get changed to 18 over was minors could be present with a parent. So you, as the protester over here with your little cardboard sign and your Sharpie, would have been
here or whatever. No, they wouldn't have.
Like, why don't you trust the parent to make the decision for their children? You're over here trying to get all these books banned in schools because you don't think that, you know, other parents should be able to have, it literally makes no fucking sense. It makes no sense. You think you as a parent have a right to ban books for all children, but other parents do not have a right to take their child to a drag show. No one's taking your child to a drag show. No one's going to come back to your door and bang down your door and come in drag or kidnap your child and take them to a drag show. Like, it is all just so fucking absurd. I cannot.
It's absolutely absurd. And it's so disheartening too, because we just did the Marsha P. Johnson case where people were arrested for dressing in drag and for being gay, basically. And it's like, are we moving back towards that? Is all the progress we made, which was not enough progress, but all the progress we've made is just gone. And it's just, and it breaks my heart, especially not only for all of the drag queens and performers in my life that I love, especially our dear friend who we went to go see, but like the trans community, like trans children who are almost being told their existence is illegal. Like
they talked about that a lot last night of like, we try to have this like open and welcoming community so that we can have these like 14, 15, 16-year-olds who come in and feel, oh, like this is okay. Like this is what I feel inside that everyone tells me I can't feel, but wow, here's 50 people who all understand and that this is okay. And so maybe I can be okay like that. And it's just like, they're not going to have that space anymore.
And even last night they were saying like one of the vendors could not be there because they were 16 and they just loved this community and wanted to sell their drawings and make money. And they're being told by the state of Tennessee they can't. And it's just, I don't know. It's Tennessee by the day. It just makes me hate it more and more. And I mean, I do want to say there are a lot of communities in Knoxville, in Nashville, and probably even the rural parts that are fighting really hard. And it's not a vast majority. It's not everyone. And there are a lot of people fighting for good. And we just gotta fight harder, I guess. I don't know. Like,
if you guys are in Tennessee or in another state that's doing this, like reach out to your reps, like let them know that like this is not okay. Let them know that there are a lot of people who disagree with this, and let each parent make the decision for their own damn child. Like,
that is the thing. Like,
man, our perk of the week just did not bring this up.
We said we were gonna lift you up, and we brought you back down. But
okay,
Our beautiful Alexandra Cartier was absolutely
fabulous.
Incredible.
Yes, so much. Like, we had a fantastic time. Like, it was my first time like getting to see them perform, and I was just like over the moon, like so excited. Yes. Also, just gonna throw out a secondary like tier 2 perk of the week here, that I got my first bag of Starburst jelly beans this week, so y'all know how happy that makes me. Courtney, when you guys were here today, I was like, oh, like if they come inside, like I need to like make sure and give Kevin some, and then I forgot about it.
We have a bag here too.
Oh, okay.
we went to Walgreens and I was like, do you want me to get some? He's like, I'm trying not to, and I was like, these are only here for like another month.
Yep, you gotta get them while you can, you know. So like we said, if you guys have suggestions, again, thank you, Jennifer, for the suggestion. We really appreciate it. Not one that was on my radar, but definitely a really important, important story to tell. And that's why we appreciate you guys like letting us know the suggestions and letting us know like what you guys want to hear too, because obviously we want to cover the cases that you guys are interested in, the cases that are close to you guys, you know, whatever. Please let us know. Suggestions if you want to talk to us about the drag shows that you go to. You know, all the things. You guys know where to find us. It's in the show notes, all of our links to everything. And our most important link is also here in the show notes to patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, where you get monthly bonus episodes and, you know, all kinds of just other fun perks ranging from $3 a month to $20 a month. So you have a lot of different options. I think you can do like a one-time thing too. Maybe not. Maybe I'm making that up. Anyway,
no, but you can like get it and then cancel it.
Oh yeah, that's true. So if you guys want to like subscribe and like hurry up and listen to a bunch of episodes and then leave, that's fine. You know, we love you while you're there. We love you all the time anyway. So, you know, it's great.
But we love you a little extra more when you give us money. But no, I'm just kidding. But please also give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. Just anything you can to just spread some love out there for our little podcast. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.